The Bear Essentials podcast gives older bears a place to gather for real talk regarding topics and issues that they can relate to. Here at The Bear Essentials, we aren't just having conversations. We are looking to provide actionable intelligence through real-life experience and expertise of our guests. Our mission is to build a strong community that elevates and motivates people to go beyond their limiting beliefs by helping them realize that getting older is not an excuse to hibernate on their goals, but a reason to work harder.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is the founder of the Magnum Vault. He helps stuck entrepreneurs break through and create life and business on their own terms. I'm extremely excited to bring this podcast to you today. So without further ado, let's jump right into my interview with Anric Blatt.
But first, a word from our sponsor. The Bear Essentials podcast is sponsored by Fire Beast Jerky. With flavors ranging from tropical flair to sweet reaper, Fire Beast has something for all jerky lovers. And with over 30 years of experience making small batch, big flavor jerky, Fire Beast is sure to deliver quality, affordable jerky directly to your doorstep anywhere in America. So head on over to firebeastjerky.com and be sure to use code BEAR10 at checkout and receive 10% off your order from Fire Beast, the heat that is sweet. Hey, I'm Rick. Thanks for joining, man. I really appreciate it. How you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for letting me delay us a little bit and get a cup of coffee, because without coffee flowing through these veins, the world is a dark and strange place. So I think your viewers are much better off with me having coffee.
Hey, I understand the coffee. I enjoy my own coffee, as a matter of fact. Here, I have mine also.
Hey, that's a cool cup. Let me see that cup. That is cool. What is that on there?
It's a dog. I have German Shepherd, and
very cool.
It's the company I use to the course I took to help train my dog. It's called Tricos. So shout out to Tricos and former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland.
Nice.
Helped me train my German Shepherd Klaus to a level that I never dreamed. So shout out to Mike if he sees that.
I love the name Klaus. By the way, I'm actually German. I'm like a real German, not the way Americans say I'm German. I'm actually German, mm-hmm. And that was the passport I traveled on before I became an American citizen. But I love German Shepherds. I lived in Hong Kong in the 90s. And I had two German Shepherds, and my God, they are just such. I mean, as you know, now we are golden retriever people through and through, and will never change. But if somebody said to me, "Hey, you cannot get a golden retriever," and I couldn't sneak a Labrador through the door, I would absolutely go back to a German Shepherd, because they are just such wonderful dogs, and very different to golden retrievers, by the way. But
very smart breed. So yeah, and it's been great. It's been great having them. So
I love the name Klaus, because you could literally go, Klaus, sitz, jawohl, nein, nicht, raus. And in German it sounds so good. It's so authoritative. You know what I mean? Yeah,
no, and a couple things. He nine, he understands.
Nine.
Lots he understands.
Hey, listen, I had a thought in the shower today. I was thinking about you in the shower, but that came out weird. But you know what I mean. And I didn't have time enough to change my Zoom background, because I just finished all my challenges and boot camps and all sorts of stuff. But I wanted to get one of a video, which I think I might actually still do, and I'll send it to you, of a video of ripples in a pond, because we really are ripples, and the ripples that you created might have, in fact, saved my life. And if you don't mind, I'll explain how I get it, because I don't know how you got to your health journey. But you must have had a tremendous impact on Chris Bentley, who I really have gotten quite close to through his ordeal. And so your ripple affected him, and he then got on this health and mindset and discipline kick. And watching him have his kind of evolution, I then got same kind of feedback from another friend of mine in Colorado, Pete Nowicki, because he was like exercising at 1 o'clock in the morning in the snow and the howling wind and all sorts of things. And it was all about this like 75 hard challenge. And today I am on day 36. I finished 35 last night. And it all started with you. So
well, I appreciate that. We're definitely
Hats off
going
to
to, we'll definitely even get into that even a little more.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Okay.
I don't think, and I hope if they don't, I think they should. I wish more people knew who Anric was. So let introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, I mean, I giggle a little bit at that, Charles, because I could take the whole podcast with that. And I have on my other computer, I have a background of a lighthouse. And I love that vision because your life serves either as a warning or as an example to others, right? And obviously we can tell that funny joke about the USS Nimitz class and the lighthouse, but I find in my early life, I think I was more of a warning to others, even though I thought of myself as a pretty cool lighthouse as an example, you know what I mean? But it was really a life of kind of interesting knock. So let me see if I can do it real quick, okay? Born in what was then Southwest Africa, now called Namibia, Banana Republic, power to the people, you know what I mean? Wonderful old German colony, bottom end of Africa. Most Americans, and this might find this offensive, but I don't mean it that way, think of Africa as one place. They'll go, oh, I went to Africa. And I'm like, well, which part? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's a bit like when people see the United States, they think it's all the same place, including Canada and Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I think would be a good idea, but we'll get onto that on a later point. You know what I mean? When we're back to drinking bourbon, which I'm not at the moment. So, born in a German colony, which means I grew up more German than anybody else. German underwear, German shirts, German pants, German butter, German preserves. Dad died at age 6. So I had to grow up real quickly, really quickly, and just started this life of making mistakes, mostly learning from them, but being German, as you'll know from your shepherd Klaus, we're stubborn. So very often I had to learn those 3 times. Started this kind of career that, age 16, didn't want to go to school, started a DJ business, grew that into a nightclub, finished school, figured out how to get really good at that whole school thing, went to college, got one of the most amazing scholarships in the world, the Sir Mark Turner Memorial Scholarship from Rio Tinto Zinc, and started networking at that age, because that's what Rio Tinto was looking for. I mean, they would fly you to meet the board of directors of RTZ. So as a 18, 19-year-old, right through college, and we had to have regular meetings, I would literally meet the entire board and became a networker. Started my first business in Africa, which was a phenomenal business. Traveled right through Africa, had 19 offices, took the company public, learned the hard way that the investment bankers made more money on that deal than I did. And by, circumstances, they say you are the average of the 5 people closest to you. And if you cannot find 5 good people, make one of those God and make another one a good book. I read a lot. So I read James Clavell's novels of Taipan and Shogun, 2 wonderful books, and I fell in love with the idea of me being the next Taipan in Hong Kong. So I moved to Hong Kong and thought I was absolutely cool, got involved in trading Hang Seng Index futures and Nikkei futures, and dabbled a little bit in options. And during the Asian crisis, very long story short, lost absolutely everything, all of it. I was a very wealthy young man at that point already, and literally went down to not 0, but minus 3 million. And in those days, we still paid our bills, by the way. You didn't just make an excuse and walk away from it. So I had to start again. And Charles, this is where the story gets kind of interesting, because I had all these other businesses. I've always been this entrepreneur building things, but I really thought, you know what, you can't be a jack of all trades. And that saying is actually wrong. People use it wrong, but I won't digress. And I got into financial services. right in the middle of the Asian crisis. And I thought, I better learn how to do this. How do I learn how to do this? But nobody wanted to hire me. And you're gonna love this, because this boot camp that that I now do starts from that day. Because I started this job at this company, and they promised all this training and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, okay, great. So I sat down, got there on my first day, and I said, all right, let's start the training. And the dude threw down 2 telephone books at me, and he says, there's your training, get started. And you know what? I don't know about you, but I still cannot do a cold call. I hate them. I don't like getting them. I get clammy. It gets weird. And I mean, you're talking to a guy who's built a couple of, multi-billion-dollar businesses. I still don't cold call. And I realized then that was the start of my revolution, because I think that's the wrong way to do business. So fast forward, I'd learned the ropes with a few companies, built their hedge fund businesses in Asia and the Middle East, and then went out on my own, built a phenomenal business called Infinity Capital. And, I suppose it didn't blow it up. That's the wrong word. That's a bad word. Just sold it too early. Sold it too soon. I could have ridden that wave really into the stratosphere, but I got out too early because I realized I don't actually like managing other people's money. Anyway, so this introduction is getting this unstructured introduction is getting probably a little boring, but I really just love building businesses, and I've built a number of asset management businesses, and it's easy for me because it's a bit like when Neo first sees the Matrix. Once you figure out how to do it, you can just do it all day long and get better and better and better at it. And the same goes, do you remember all those guys who built those kind of credit unions and those, local regional banks and so on? And they build up these banks, and then they sell them. Then they have a 3-year non-compete, and then they go and do it again. Because once you figure out the model, it's super easy. My problem is I don't like managing other people's money. I love building the businesses, don't like managing the money. It's just too much responsibility, and I don't sleep at night and so on. So I basically retired from the money management industry. God, it feels like, I don't know, maybe 2008 I started, and I still ran some interesting funds. But then over time, I really switched into this role of kind of becoming an advisor, a board member, and a consultant. And then I'm like, this is boring. I can do better. And I started tinkering with people's business models. So I would have these hedge fund managers, venture capital, private equity, real estate funds come to me, and they're like, how do we do this? I'm like, easy. It's like a Rubik's Cube. Fix it. And then somebody said, oh, what do we pay you for? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Send me a check. And these checks, I'm like, wow, this is a good business. And then at a certain point, Charles, I'm sorry, I'm going to shut up in a second. I just had this breakthrough moment where I'm like, the people that I'm helping are not actually the people that need the help. Because why do you want to make these multi-billion-dollar companies even bigger? I mean, mostly, I don't think they do their clients a great service. And so Laura Louise and I, who've been lifelong fans of that concept of constant and never-ending improvements, we are always investing in ourselves, whether it's through Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Darren Hardy. I mean, you name it, we are constantly at the very top level in those masterminds and growing and growing. We're like, you know what? We can help more people. And that's how we got into building this Magnum Vault. And I know that I really should do better with that introduction, but there was a very long story of somebody who's lived on 5 continents, been to 147 countries, has built 50 different businesses, and is still here standing, basically going with that Japanese proverb, fall down 7, get up 8, fall down 7, get up 8. And that's my philosophy. I'm sorry, Charles, that was a very long-winded.
It's okay. And I'm glad you did it, because here's what I want to ask you. You, in everything I see with you, it exudes confidence, success, and even your story, the way you tell it does. It's you're a confident man. You're a successful man. I want to ask you, what's that part that you don't talk about? Maybe what's that part deep down inside that maybe like scares you? The part that still makes you nervous, that, people looking at you might be like, really? That's your fear. Like, what is that?
There's a lot of them actually, because we're as humans, we're all these imperfect people, and as a youngster who just sorry, I got a frog in my throat here. You're making me emotional first thing in the morning already. No, as we all have to learn, and we have to burn our fingers, and I have just always been the guy that went that road alone. I was always in every possible category the smartest guy in the room, even if I was the only one that thought that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I never fit in. Steve Jobs has a wonderful little video on square pegs in round holes, and obviously being German, I own Square, and I never fit in. So I always created my own club. And it's an interesting thing. My kind of big watershed moment really came when I first met Laura Louise, who I think you've seen around here too.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us were incredibly successful. And I mean, certainly, that old saying, "Dear Lord, please make my life as awesome as it looks on Facebook."
Mm-hmm.
I don't have Facebook anymore, but you know what I mean. It looks amazing. The super yachts, the private jets, the house in Italy on the lake, the boats, the ski chalets in Vail. I mean, it all looks amazing, right? But at the end of the day, we are all vulnerable, broken, damaged individuals. And until I met Laura Louise, I had never realized. I remember the exact moment. We were in the car heading out of New York City to her place in Oyster Bay, Long Island, with the roof down on the car, and she was playing that song "Lonely No More" by Rob Thomas. And I realized until that moment that I've actually been alone my whole life. It was always me against the machine, and that had just stopped. I was no longer alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the real pivot, because I don't know, it was such a raw moment of realizing that, man, you don't need to be alone, And so now you've got this thing that's changed your life, right? And I mean, I used to make jokes. I'm like, you have no idea what true love is until you own a Labrador, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you really do find the mate to your soul, that connection, and that fear of losing that person is something that I have no words for. But I know you wanted maybe a little more rational answer, and the other one of that is fear of rejection, which comes from a deep-centered thing of, I mean, just think of my childhood and the number that my mother did on me, but I wouldn't change any of it for the world, because it is who you are, right? But this deep fear of rejection lives inside all of us. And it expresses itself differently. With me, it always expressed as a youngster in too much showing off, too much, all sorts of bullshit, an unhealthy relationship with food, an even unhealthier relationship with exercise, kind of knee-jerk reactions. But it was also fuel that made me successful, because I figured out how to take that stuff and use it for fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So in one of our boot camps, I do a training session where really a little bit about this, where I talk about like weaponize your scar tissue. And that's why I was so drawn to you, Charles, because you have really done that in the most humble, sweet, kind of way. And like those ripples in the pond, you are literally doing that, because somebody stumbles on and I'm not a podcast guy, because I want to see who I'm talking to, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I love your video posts, because I'm like, you can really get into some of the characters, and I mean that the fighting bare knuckle fighter that you had, and that, man, you learn a couple of things there, and then the Marine guy that you had on it, and the British triple amputee, you know what I mean? And you read all these things, and you're like, holy shit, and I think my problems are bad, you know what I mean? And those ripples, I think, Charles, are so wonderful, because you might as well make them good ripples, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really respect you for that, and I love what you're doing with it.
Hey, I appreciate everything you just said there. It means the world to me. And I want to give you a bit of a compliment here, because when you gave your answer, and it was telling to me, because you went, I don't even know if you did this subconsciously or meant to, but you talked about a lot of the things, the material things, and you laid it all out, that all this, all this and that, right? A lot of those things. And you talked about rejection and how that influenced you. But then you kind of went back to how it ends up still coming down to another person and a relationship. Now, what I want to say about you is, I want to be totally honest, until you just went through that about all the things, I knew you're a successful person. But what I always got from you was that I never thought the ulterior motive from you was financial or building more. Like, to me, I always felt, and this is what I try to do with the podcast, I try to be drawn to people where I think they're looking to help people. And nothing's wrong with making money, right? But I think they're trying to help people. So I think you do a great job of that, Anric. I think even through all your success, which was hard earned through a lot of failure, and the thing you said about fuel, I did a whole thing on that myself about fear is fuel. I couldn't agree more. So kudos to you and Laura Louise, and the way you're going about things. I really hope more people start to tune in to what you do. So let me ask you this. If it was all gone, all of it, does that scare you, or are you comfortable with it could be all gone, that you could start again and you'd have no worries about starting again?
Yeah, that's not, doesn't even come. I don't even need to think about that, because it's, I think when you have a good heart and you know that what you do has a place and has a, that you can serve people, right? And you can get paid for it. I could start, you could drop me off in the middle of Brazil, and I'd have to pick up my Portuguese real quickly. You know what I mean? But I could do it again. I could do all of it again. In fact, I'm doing it now. And I think every grown man, at our age, Charles, should completely and utterly reinvent themselves regularly, because we are literally full of BS. And I don't mean BS in the kind of, in that way, belief system. Our belief systems are so broken because we didn't put them there. We start off, just think of the last time that most people were actually really authentic was as a baby, like 4 months old. You know what I mean? And then, very quickly you start learning this risk reward behavior, and you realize, hey, if I cry, that sweet, nice smelling lady with the nice boobies comes over, you know what I mean, and cuddles me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that again. You know what I mean? And so you learn. And then as you're a little kid, you get spanked and you get slapped. And I grew up with really, really bad, punishment, and, the nuns and the very weird Dutch priest. I mean, they beat us senseless with a very aggressive alcoholic stepfather who, once actually emptied an entire clip of an AK-47 in the living room. You know what I mean? So growing up in a civil war type country, all this stuff gets taken from you. And then, through living in South Africa with being hijacked and, all of this, if you wipe out all the nonsense and you realize what it's about, it's really about your relationships. Everything is about relationships. And, kind of getting into the Magnum Vault a little bit, why Laura Louise and I both, have given up 35-year plus careers in finance to do this, Charles, because if you think of wealth, it comes from the word well health. You cannot have wealth without health. Those two go absolutely hand in hand. But what's the thing that unites them all? it's your mindset. It's your mindset, your belief system, the rituals, the skills that you've learned to train your mind, right? And then I look at what's below this, and normally I have a sexy graphic that comes up and explains it in four ikigai circles, but I'll spare your viewers from that this morning. But all of it is about relationships, because if you think about all the health and the wealth and all of the things that you do, without people to share them with, without people to share in that growth and continue, people who pull you along, you have nothing. You really, nothing means anything. So could I start again? Absolutely. Am I starting again right now? Absolutely right. I have never earned this little money, probably going back 20 years. And I'm quite okay with that. It's not because of the big reserves and things like that. I have really, really big plans, but it is okay to start from the bottom again, to start small. Yeah, I mean, when I started this whole journey, I had to learn all of these digital skills. I now run Zoom rooms with thousands of people in them, in multiple rooms. I've built incredible technology to bridge these digital divides, because, people want old school. Like what you and I are doing right now is actually a modern version of sitting around a fireplace and chewing the fat and talking, right? And the fact that we're able to do it. Where are you again? I thought you were up north somewhere cold.
Yeah, I am. I'm in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yeah. So right now I'm in the Smoky Mountains down in the Carolinas. But the fact that it's like random where we are with this incredible technology, and we just finished a challenge with all sorts of cool people in it, and they were from all over the world. And then I run an Asia room that's also running live, but obviously I can't be in both places. So I record this one, start playing it in the Asia room, and then when I finish my boot camp, I go over there and I'm in the chat and so on. And it's wonderful technology, but it's all about old school connections, right?
Yeah.
And people want old school, even though you can embrace new school technology. But so I love this. I've never really gone on podcasts because I don't really watch a lot of podcasts. So I thought, and then I realized, hey, you actually do, because these clips that you have, I have a vault and a library of the world's most amazing speakers and people who are now dead, whose content I listen to over and over again. And I realized, wow, I actually just built my own podcast vault. And I think it's so fascinating and so amazing. And I love the way that you get into the different characters, and you don't seem to have an agenda, because most podcast hosts have a kind of a self-serving agenda. Your agenda is kind of like, hey man, I'm just going to go do this thing here, and then I'm going to pay it forward and pay it forward and pay it forward. And someday somebody's going to notice it.
Yeah, honestly, when I tell this story, when I decided to start the podcast, I literally was like, okay, I think my mom will watch it, maybe my wife and kids, and they'll watch it just to make fun of me, because they thought, it was funny. And, even Anric, it's funny. I mean, the name for the podcast, it comes from my kids call me Bear.
I watched your in your highlight reel, where you did like the best of, and there's the little clip of where you are in your checkered shirt. Yeah, I mean, looking like a fifth grader. I mean, I can't believe, is that like only last year?
Yeah, that was January 10th of 20.
Yeah, that's it. So so we're basically a year into this, and you look like a kid who's like, okay, so I did this thing. Papa Bear is here. I love it.
That was it, man. And it stemmed from paying it forward, though. And I wanted, one of the things I can't let you leave, because this part really makes me excited, and it changed my life. And for anybody watching, obviously besides, some of the Tony Robbins, David Goggins, guys like that, there's another gentleman that I was definitely following as I was on my health journey, Andy Frisella.
Yeah.
And he has a program called 75 Hard. And, it's 75 days. And trust me, for those who've done it, congrats. For those who are attempting it or in the midst of it, you can do this, but it is a mother bleeper, I'll say, because everybody starts at, and Anric, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, I think everybody starts it thinking about the physical component of it, right? Which there is. It's, at least 2 45-minute workouts a day. One has to be outside. That's part of it. You have to drink a gallon of water. You have to read at least 10 pages of nonfiction.
Good reminder.
There you go. And I think everybody really focuses on that physical component, which, at the time I was almost 50 when I did it. And Anric is he's in the process of it now. I found that it was about, I want to say between day 12 and 15, it really started to weigh on me. I was really starting to feel the soreness physically. And that was my spot where I was having my conversation with myself, that, that voice that wanted me to quit.
Yeah.
I didn't. I finished it. I wanted to ask you, how's it going? Have you had that where you've had times where you're like, oh shit, I can't do this? Have you had that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating journey, Charles. I have kind of, in some ways, I've always been maybe a little unhealthy, and because I've always figured out how to hack everything, right? And I was never into team sports as a youngster and so on. And so I was always this stocky, chubby kid. But my mother was a phenomenal cordon bleu chef. And, from the age of 17, this sounds arrogant, but I literally could afford anything that I wanted to, because I figured out the system, right? So I embarked into this life of excess. More. And I love hosting dinner parties, and I love cooking, and I love eating, and I love trying different things. So, there are so many things around food and exercise that were out of balance for me. And it's always the thing that I've taken for granted, because I have so much energy and I can pump it up. And you're talking to a guy that I lived on airplanes. Literally, I would count the boarding passes just as a, like a notch in the headboard of my bed. I would do over 300 flights a year, sometimes 350 flights a year. Basically, every day I was on an airplane, in a dinner party, hosting people for dinner, flying out at midnight, next business meeting, next breakfast on the morning. So over the years, I just gotten fat and lazy, right? And when I moved to Switzerland in the early 2000s, right, I got very healthy. Really got on a mountain bike and cut out all the sugars and all that stuff. Tony Robbins had an impact on my life, and I got pretty healthy. And then I moved to the United States, where bingo, God, everything. Your average portion, you go to a nice Italian restaurant, is the size of what they serve an entire family in Italy, right? And of course, we've got to try all these things. And I got to tell you, Laura Louise is a spectacular cook. It's unbelievable. And of course, we're in love, and we're going to all the restaurants, and we're flying all over the world. But I still have my corporate gig too, so I'm doing that too. And over time, I'm back to being unhealthy, right? And I'm purposefully going into the depth here, because there is this relationship that's wrong, and I'm borrowing from my health, but yet I'm running the energy, and I'm doing more than pretty much anyone I know. And in that process, you start getting into these habits that you can't undo. So then the next thing is you're on high blood pressure medicine. And then they say, oh, your triglycerides and so on, and we're going to put you on statins and all that kind of stuff. And then I have a hereditary and lifestyle infused affinity for gout, right? So now I'm stiff and sore, and I have these gout attacks and all that stuff. And you go to the medical system, and what do they want to do? Oh, here, have another pill, have another pill, have another pill. And, Laura Louise, who's just this incredible doyen of health, she's like, stop. So because of the ripples that you started via Chris Bentley to Pete Nowicki, I started looking into the 75 hard thing. And you are absolutely right. So now I'm actually finally getting around to answering your question. Sorry, Charles, I do this.
It's okay.
And here's an interesting business lesson for all of us and your podcast, because if you think of us as clients of 75 Hard, people will come to you and they will buy what they want so that you can come around the back and give them what they need. And it is one of the greatest business lessons. Every time I start a boot camp or a challenge or something like that, and I build this beautiful landing page, the landing page is all giving them what they need. And then I wonder, why does it fail? Well, because people are going to buy what they want, and then it's up to you to actually serve them and give them what they need. And so it is with the 75 Hard thing. We are drawn to it because of a health catalyst or something like that, right? But that is just the symptom. The actual cause of it is a weak mindset, no discipline, to the point that I even have it on a Zoom virtual background. 1 second, let me show you quickly here. Boom, this is one of mine. Yeah, I mean, like discipline now equals freedom later. And we as fat, lazy, comfortable, middle-aged men, we have become the kings of making excuses. And that's what I love about the 75 Hard. And we should send Andy this as a testimonial, because men in America have become weak. We have allowed ourselves, this whole culture about toxic masculinity and all this other BS, but you need to reclaim your power, not in some big, nasty, macho way, but we need to go back to being the guys that solve things, fix things, that step up, that can be relied on, that our family can rely on. Our kids look up to us. They don't see, there's dad on the couch eating Cheetos, and drinking beer. No, there's dad out there with a chainsaw doing cool man shit. That's a much better role model. Or hey, and I noticed it the other night. So my eureka moment came later than yours, because I've been running. We've been, in between various homes and hosting all these events that we're doing, and basically just doing too much. I'm like doing my second exercise at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just running like crazy. And then we're in the car and we're doing training in the car on the way all the way over here, and I've turned my car into a studio, and it's just nuts. So Lola Louise and I just somehow screwed it up. So here we are at, I don't know, about 10:30 at night, and we live way up in the mountains, and it's sleeting outside. Now, I grew up in a desert country where I'm okay with cold, and we've lived for a long time in Vail, Colorado. I love snow, but sleet is this thing that it's neither rain or ice, and it comes with wind, and it's not fun. And of course, the dogs want to go out. So here's Lola Louise and I in the mountains in the middle of the night. And I tell you, it's so dark, you cannot see your hand in front of your eyes, with these 3 golden retrievers who think this is cool. Well, they did for the first 3 minutes. Now we're out hiking, getting exercise at, basically right up until midnight. And it is so cold and it is so wet. And we just arrived here, so we didn't charge the dogs' lights. So now all the batteries are going flat, and I'm like walking with Lola Louise. I'm like, you know what? And I'm going to say a bad word on your podcast. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And she's like, why? And I'm like, you know what? I feel good. I feel really good. We said we're going to do this thing, and now we're doing this thing. And I have more energy than the energy, the Energizer Bunny. And, I'm feeling great. And the side effects of I've lost 22 pounds. I have another 30 to go. And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. I'll get there. I sleep like the dead, like literally like the dead. You have to like come and prod me. But in the mornings, as soon as my alarm goes up and I change my alarm, I moved all my devices out of the house. Out of the room. In my closet, my phone rings with that song, Africa by Toto. And it's just a nice way to wake up in the morning. And I'm like, I'm up. Boom. I stop drinking coffee first thing in the morning. I have a nice glass of hot lemon water, and I am doing more in a day since I've started this challenge, even though it takes time. Just think of the exercise, and you've got to change your diet and all this kind of stuff. We're also doing one of Laura Louise's Saving Seven diets, which you should talk to her about, by the way. It's really phenomenal, really, really amazing. She's hacked the metabolism, biorhythms, and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite remarkable. Yes, I'm sorry I took your microphone and never gave it back.
That's okay.
I think it's an outstanding mental discipline with the side effects of health and energy and regaining your control and almost like regaining your integrity. Because if you think of integrity, Charles, it's really the deal that you make with yourself that I got so comfortable breaking that I didn't even think about it anymore. And I'm like, yeah, if I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. I kid you not. I have a funny little joke that I show in my boot camps. I will literally put it up on my background here. So unfortunately, it cuts off the top and the bottom of it. But it's incredibly funny because he starts off writing in black with these New Year's resolutions: lose weight, get fit, give up alcohol, stand up to boss. And then the next year he comes and he writes in red: lose more weight, get fit. Okay, still on the list. Give up alcohol and cigarettes, and stand up to boss. And then the next year he comes back in blue, and he's now crossed out the more and get fit next year. He's crossed out the cigarettes, and the next year that was 2012. That was the last one. He crosses that all out and says lose weight again. Right now he's crossed that out, and he just says drink less. And then down the bottom, it actually gets really funny because it stands up to boss. Now he obviously stood up to the boss, and he's got to find a job. But the best one is down below, where it says, be nice to my wife, be nicer to my wife, be nice to my ex-wife. And it just really kind of got me thinking, that, we really just have gotten too lazy. We really have and we've gotten too weak, and we just allow ourselves to do that.
Well, I'm really glad to hear about your journey on 75 Hard. I'm so glad that more people are definitely doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that story you told about the late at night and all that, I think that's really what is ultimately the goal, is that it really gets your mindset to a point that after you're more capable after you do this to really do more things.
And I think it rebuilds your confidence in yourself, because you're like, you know what? Yeah, I can do this because I said I was going to do it. Now I'm doing it, and it sucks. The no drinking thing. How did you do with that?
So here's crazy thing is I've never been a drinker, which is kind of funny because if I was, I don't know how much worse I would have been. Right. I was already over 100 pounds overweight. So if I added alcohol to the mix, I think it probably would have even been more of a disaster. I will say, and you may have heard me say this on some other things, definite sweet tooth, cookies. People say drinking. For me, I'll say that it was chocolate chip cookies. I tell people I was OCD, obsessive cookie disorder. That was my issue, right? And I used to get called the Cookie Monster.
Yeah,
kids, right? But it was that. But you mentioned your moment. It's funny because there was a time towards the end. It was literally a horrible rain, and Anric, I kid you not, I looked outside, I heard the rain, and I was like, "Oh my God, I finally get to do this!" And I went. I went to this where I do hill sprints. I did 45 minutes of up and down the hill in that monsoon. And it was just, it was that thing. So yeah, I'm glad. I hope more people, look, if people 75 Hard, Anric's doing it, I did it. If you have interest, let us know. We'll be glad to walk you through it. Anric, I wanted to end with this, something you touched on in the very beginning, because I thought it was poignant. And I want to give you this opportunity to say this. You said something that really, it was about the ripple, but it was about being a lighthouse. What do you say to people? You're the lighthouse. How do you draw people? How do you draw people to your light to help them just become better versions of themselves?
Okay, so this we could do a whole podcast on this, because intention trumps execution all day long. Intention is senior to the mechanics. But it's a little bit like LinkedIn, right? Let's just take LinkedIn as a little micro example, because then people can see it, because that's where I met you. And I meet so many people on LinkedIn because I have built an absolute kick-ass funnel, because I figured out how the machine works, and you don't need 100,000 followers. You can do it with 1,000. Okay. And you need to create the system so that you have some kind of content at the top, some kind of light that comes around that people can see, right? And obviously people naturally might be drawn to something they don't understand or something like that, but that's not sustainable. Your message of your intention, the thing that you're doing, needs to drag people further deeper down into your funnel, because just having this good intention and having this good message means absolutely bugger all, zip all, if nobody sees it. Okay, and that's the challenge. And who has 10 years to sit around and wait to build this thing up? So I'm like, okay, how do we accelerate this thing, right? So when you look at the guys who are overnight success stories, no, it's a 15-year slugging it out in the middle of the night success story. You just happen to have caught the last 3 seconds of it. And it's about intention and mechanics. You've got to build the mechanics so that people can find you and connect with you. So that is my superpower. I build funnels, right? If I can convince somebody to give me $100 million in one meeting, trust me, I can get you to come to my boot camp so that I can serve you, I can help you, I can break through to you, I can show you the tools, I can show you the tricks, right? A little bit of what you're doing with your podcast now, right? You had to start slowly. And you had to feel your way around. And then I look at all the episodes and they just keep getting better, and they keep getting better because you're getting better. You're getting more confident. So with that, you're attracting an audience where now you actually have a skill, Charles, which you didn't have when you first started. You are able to pull out the gems in all the noise, pull out the good things, curate people, be a little bit of a pinball machine, and so you need to create a system. It's a bit, as a youngster, I was obsessed with Pac-Man, and I'm like, there is a system here. We can fix this. We can figure this out. And then there is a system. You need to create the system, because motivation alone is not enough. And I read all these nice, wonderful quotes where, like, faith is taking the first step without seeing the staircase. I'm like, dude, I'm going to build the staircase so that I know it's there, right? And we have to get our message out, because we are the light. And if you look at, I was saying this to Chris Bentley the other day, and I tell you, he's in my thoughts every day, because I know he screwed up, and I know he screwed up badly, but boy, is he paying the price, and boy, is he trying to fix it. And, I do think God has a big plan for that man, right? I know it. And I literally, there were points I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying this. I put him on my VIPs of my phone, because, even at night when your phone is on do not disturb, the people that are in your VIPs can get through, because I'm like, if Chris needs to talk to anybody, let him call me anytime, right? So I think about him a lot, because he is a lighthouse. He's this Marine, and he wanted to build this company, and he did this thing really well, and he made a few mistakes, and then he covered them up and made some more mistakes and covered them up. But he is a lighthouse. Not just in terms of being a warning for others not to crash on the rocks, but also, I'm a boater. I've been a boater my whole life. Man, I tell you, when you've been out at sea and you can't see nothing and you can't see anything, and you know it's there, and you know it's there, and you know it's there, and you're in some really treacherous terrain, and you see that lighthouse, it is a beautiful moment, because suddenly know where you are and where you're going. And that is how we, I think, have to be, both as fathers, as husbands, as entrepreneurs, as leaders in our community, but also as followers in our community, right? It's like, be the light, bring the light, but you got to build a system, because otherwise you're the world's best kept secret. And that's what I've dedicated my next few years to, is like, I help people build a system. We help people really break through that mindset to design life and business on their terms. Because if your business serves your life, well, now you get to grow and contribute more to other people, right? And so it becomes this like win-win effect, where 2 + 2 = 22, not 4. And that's why I love what you're doing, and I want to do more of it, and I want to be a part of it, because our message has to come out. And I think the 75 hard thing is such a great example. I mean, just look at it. It's become a global movement, right? Because Andy wasn't trying to hold it on for himself and make money off it. But look at the benefits to his business of First Form and his masterminds and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a huge fan, and I'm really grateful that I've stumbled on this journey, because I'm now building the next thing. I said to Laura Louise the other day, she's a poor woman, suffers in silence, because I'm like, we should create like the couples version called 69 hard. You know what I mean? And then she's like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna ring. And I'm like, whoa, all the men would buy it. And they're like, yeah, but they're going to be all alone. So anyway, oh God, I'm incorrigible.
Well, hey, listen, man, I appreciate so much that you were willing to come and be on this side of the equation, so to speak. And I think I'm really excited to put this out there, because I think a lot of people will benefit. And to your point, I think there's a lot of messages out there that may be hidden, that it's people like you, people like me. We need to get it out there. So, Anric, thank you so much for your time today. For everyone, if any of this resonates with you, what Anric has been saying, please check him out on LinkedIn. Anric, I'll give you a shot here. What else? Websites, things like that.
I think the easiest way with me always is I got it here, is just go to magnumvault.com. Yeah, I mean, that's really the easiest way to connect. I'm building a pretty good system there, and that's always going to take you to my next boot camp, my next challenge, my next thing that I'm doing.
Well, thank you, Anric. I really, really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you again to all the people who watch and listen. I hope this resonates with you. Can't thank you all enough for watching and listening. And Anric, thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome.
Everyone,
love it, man. Love it. All right. Cheers, mate. Bye, Charles.
This has been the Bear Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.